Can a word spoken in anger and grief echo through time to claim a life? Can a warning carved into the stone of a tomb unleash a malevolent force upon those who dare to read it? For most of us, curses belong to the world of folklore and fantasy ghost stories told around a campfire to create a pleasing chill. We are modern people, guided by science and reason. We know that death comes from disease, from accident, from violence, not from ancient magic. And yet, history is haunted by shadows. It is filled with unsettling patterns and chilling coincidences that defy easy explanation. There are stories where a specific warning is given and a specific terrible fate befalls those who ignore it. These are not just campfire tales. These are events documented in the historical record, involving real people, real places, and a string of very real and often very strange deaths. This is not a collection of ghost stories. This is a historical investigation into the abyss. An examination of 5 of the most terrifying curses ever recorded. For each one, we will present the legend, the ancient warning, the dying prophecy, the desecrated grave. Then, we will follow the trail of evidence, the sequence of baffling accidents, untimely deaths, and national disasters that followed. We will look at the facts, acknowledge the skepticism, and confront the unsettling questions that remain. We invite you to be the jury, to weigh the evidence, to consider the odds, and to decide for yourself where coincidence ends and where something far more sinister might begin. Our countdown of terror starts now. Our countdown begins in the snow-capped peaks of the Bristol Alps, on the border between Austria and Italy, in September 1991. Two German hikers, Helmut and Erika Simon, stumbled upon a gruesome discovery emerging from the melting ice, the astonishingly well-preserved body of a man. This was Ötzi the Iceman, a 5,300-year-old mummy, complete with his clothes, his tools, and even his last meal still in his stomach. It was one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century. But as scientists celebrated, whispers began to circulate. To disturb the dead is to invite their wrath. And Ötzi, it seemed, did not appreciate being woken from his long slumber. The curse had begun. The first victim was Raina Hen, the head of the forensic team that examined Ötzi. In 1992, just 1 year after he had personally bagged the Iceman's remains, Hen was killed in a horrific head-on car crash while on his way to give a lecture about his findings. Next was Kurt Fritz, the experienced mountaineer who had led Hen to the body. A year after Hen's death, Fritz was leading a group in the same mountain range when a sudden, violent avalanche swept down, burying him. He was the only member of his party to be killed. The chain of death continued. In 2004, Helmut Simon, the very man who first laid eyes on Ötzi, went hiking alone near the same spot where he had made his famous discovery. A severe blizzard moved in, and he vanished. His body was found 8 days later at the bottom of a 300-foot cliff. Within months, the curse struck again. Dieter Warnick, the head of the rescue team that found Helmut Simon's body, died of a massive heart attack less than an hour after attending Simon's funeral. Then came Konrad Spindler, the leading expert on Ötzi, the man who declared to the world, "It's all a media hype. The next thing you'll be telling me is I'm the next victim." He died in 2005 from complications of multiple sclerosis. Finally, Tom Loy, a molecular archaeologist who discovered human blood on sea's weapons, died from a hereditary blood disease he was diagnosed with. Shortly after beginning his work on the mummy, the list of the dead, all key figures in the Iceman's discovery and initial research, had grown to 7. Of course, skeptics are quick to point out the flaws in the legend. Hundreds of people have worked on sea's remains and lived long, healthy lives. The victims were often older men, or men engaged in high-risk activities like alpine mountaineering. Statistically, it's not impossible that these deaths were simply a string of unrelated tragedies, woven together by a sensationalist press. But the question lingers, hanging in the cold mountain air. 7 key figures, 7 strange and untimely deaths, all linked to the discovery of one ancient man. Can that truly be dismissed as a mere statistical anomaly? Or did Ötzi the Iceman, murdered and left for dead in the ice 5,300 years ago, bring a chilling curse back with him into the modern world? We move from the frozen peaks of Europe to the halls of power in America. For a curse born from the violent expansion of a young nation in the early 1800s, as the United States pushed westward, William Henry Harrison, governor of the Indiana Territory, waged a brutal campaign against the Native American tribes resisting the takeover of their lands. His primary adversary was the brilliant Shawnee leader, Tecumseh. In 1811, at the Battle of Tippecanoe, Harrison's forces destroyed Tecumseh's settlement. Legend holds that Tecumseh's brother, a prophet, cast a terrible curse upon Harrison and the nation he represented. The curse was specific. Harrison would win the great prize he sought, the presidency, but he would die in office. And after him, every great chief chosen in a year ending in 0 would also die during his term. In 1840, Harrison was elected the 9th President of the United States. He gave the longest inaugural address in history on a bitterly cold day and died of pneumonia just 31 days later. The curse had claimed its first victim. 20 years passed. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. Amidst a bloody civil war, he guided the nation, but just a month into his second term, in 1865, he was assassinated. The chilling pattern continued. In 1880, James A. Garfield was elected. He was shot by a disgruntled office seeker less than 4 months into his presidency and died from his wounds. The 20th century offered no escape. In 1900, William McKinley was elected to his second term. The following year, he was assassinated by an anarchist. In 1920, Warren G. Harding was elected. He died in his hotel room from a sudden heart attack in 1923. In 1940, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected to his third term. He would lead the country through the Second World War, but he would not live to see its end, dying of a cerebral hemorrhage in 1945. In 1960, the charismatic John F. Kennedy was elected. In November 1963, his presidency was cut short by an assassin's bullet in Dallas, Texas. For 120 years, every single president elected in a year ending in 0 had died in office. The streak was finally broken when Ronald Reagan, elected in 1980, survived an assassination attempt in 1981. Skeptics point to this, and the fact that George W. Bush, elected in 2000, completed his terms as proof that the curse was nothing more than a series of tragic but unrelated events, a historical pattern read into history after the fact. After all, the presidency is a high-stress, high-risk job. But the sheer, unbroken precision of the pattern for over a century is staggering. 7 presidents, a perfect sequence of death foretold by a Native American leader whose people had been ravaged. Was it the longest and most macabre coincidence in political history? Or was the curse of Tippecanoe a genuine echo of vengeance, written into the fate of a nation? For our third curse, we turn to an object of breathtaking beauty that has left a trail of unparalleled misery. In its wake, the Hope Diamond. Its story begins not in a king's treasury, but in an act of profound sacrilege. Legend says the deep blue stone, then known as the Tavernier Blue, was once the eye of a sacred idol of the Hindu goddess Sita. In the 17th century, a French merchant named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier allegedly stole the gem, prying it from the statue. The temple priests, furious at the desecration, placed a powerful curse upon the stone and all who would possess it. For Tavernier, the curse was swift and brutal. Upon his return to Europe, he was reportedly torn to pieces by a pack of wild dogs. It was just the first chapter in the diamond's bloody history. The diamond found its way into the hands of French royalty, where it was recut and became part of the crown jewels. Its most famous owners were King Louis XVI and his queen, Marie Antoinette, as the French Revolution engulfed the nation in flames. The monarchy was overthrown, and both the king and queen, who had flaunted the diamond's beauty, met their end at the guillotine. After being stolen during the Revolution, the diamond vanished for years before re-emerging in London, now recut and bearing the name of its new owner, Henry Philip Hope. But the curse remained. The Hope family fell into catastrophic debt and was forced to sell the stone. Its next notable owner was the American socialite Evelyn Walsh McLean. She purchased the diamond in 1912, dismissing the curse as nonsense. Tragedy followed her for the rest of her life. Her young son was killed in a car accident. Her husband left her for another woman and later died. In a mental institution, her daughter died of an overdose, and Evelyn herself would die in debt. Her family fortune destroyed. Skeptics argue, with considerable merit, that the story of the Hope Diamond's curse is a brilliant piece of marketing. The tale of it being stolen from an idol and the more gruesome fates of its owners were likely fabricated or heavily embellished by jewelers like Pierre Cartier to create an irresistible mystique around the stone, driving up its price and fame. They point out that many of the supposed victims had only a fleeting connection to the diamond, and that tragedy befalls rich and poor alike, with or without a cursed gem. But the sheer weight of the narrative is hard to ignore. From the temples of India to the palaces of France and the mansions of America, a consistent thread of ruin, madness, and death follows this single, beautiful object. Is it merely a collection of tall tales designed to sell a stone? Or does an object, born from an act of theft and sacrilege, carry a malevolent energy, a whisper of the goddess's rage that clings to it through the centuries? At number 2, we have a curse that is not ancient, but modern, not carved in stone, but written on paper with a pen. It is a prophecy of doom, delivered by one of the most mysterious and controversial figures in Russian history, Grigory. Rasputin, the Mad Monk, as he was known, was a Siberian peasant mystic who had gained an almost hypnotic influence over the Russian Empress Alexandra by seeming to control the hemophilia of her young son. Alexei, the Russian nobility, watching Rasputin's power grow as the country stumbled through the First World War, saw him as a demonic force corrupting the throne. They decided he had to die, but Rasputin, it seems, knew what was coming. In a letter written to Tsar Nicholas II shortly before his death, he wrote a chilling and specific prophecy. "If I am killed by common assassins," he warned, "then you, Tsar of Russia, will have nothing to fear for your children. They will reign for hundreds of years. But if I am murdered by boyars, by nobles, then their hands will remain stained with my blood for 25 years. They will leave Russia. Brothers will kill brothers, and for 25 years there will be no nobles in the country. Tsar of the land of Russia, if you hear the sound of the bell that will tell you that Grigory has been killed, you must know this, that if it was your relations who have wrought my death, then no one of your family, that is to say, none of your children or relations, will remain alive for more than 2 years. They will be killed by the Russian people." On December 30th, 1916, a group of high-ranking nobles, led by Prince Felix Yusupov, lured Rasputin to a cellar. They fed him cakes and wine laced with enough cyanide to kill 5 men. To their horror, he was unaffected. In a panic, Yusupov shot him in the chest. Rasputin fell. But as they examined the body, he leaped up and attacked them before staggering out into the snow-covered courtyard. The conspirators shot him again, multiple times, bludgeoned him, and finally, to be certain, bound his body and threw it into the freezing Neva River. The nobles had killed the Mad Monk, and in doing so, they had started the clock on his prophecy. The murder, far from saving the monarchy, shattered its remaining mystique. Revolution erupted. In March 1917, the Tsar was forced to abdicate, and on the night of July 17, 1918, 1 year, 6 months, and 17 days after the nobles murdered Rasputin's Nicholas Empress Alexandra, and all 5 of their children were herded into a cellar in Ekaterinburg and executed by a Bolshevik firing squad. Skeptics argue that this was not a supernatural curse, but a brilliant political analysis. Rasputin saw the revolutionary fury boiling just beneath the surface of Russian society. He understood that his murder at the hands of the nobility would be the final spark that would consume the monarchy. His prophecy was simply a logical conclusion, but the sheer accuracy, the chilling specificity of the timeline death for the entire family within 2 years at the hands of the Russian people is uncanny. Was it merely a shrewd political forecast? Or was it the final, binding curse of a mystic, ensuring that the Romanov dynasty would be dragged down into the grave with him? And now, we arrive at number 1, the curse that started it all. The legend that has terrified archaeologists and captured the public imagination for a century. The curse of the Pharaohs. In November 1922, after years of fruitless searching in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, archaeologist Howard Carter and his wealthy patron, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, made the discovery of a lifetime. They found the sealed, untouched tomb of the boy king, Tutankhamun. As they prepared to breach the final doorway, they reportedly found an inscription. While its exact wording is debated, the legend that blazed across newspapers worldwide was chilling. Death shall come on swift wings, to him who disturbs the peace of the king. They did not listen. They entered the tomb, revealing a treasure trove of golden shrines, chariots, and priceless artifacts that had been hidden from the world for over 3,000 years. But they may have also unleashed something else. The curse did not wait long, just a few months. Later, in April 1923, Lord Carnarvon was bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. He accidentally sliced the bite open while shaving. It became infected, and he died soon after from blood poisoning, at the precise moment of his death in Cairo. A massive power outage plunged the entire city into darkness. In a stranger twist, back on his estate in England, his beloved dog, Susie, let out a howl and died. This was only the beginning. The media frenzy exploded as the body count grew. George J. Gould, a wealthy American financier who visited the tomb, fell ill with a fever and died within months. The radiologist who x-rayed the mummy, Archibald Douglas Reed, died from a mysterious illness a year later. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, publicly suggested that the death was caused by elementals guarding the tomb. Howard Carter's personal secretary, Richard Befell, was found dead in his bed from suspected smothering. And Befell's father, upon hearing the news, threw himself from a 7th-story window in a fit of grief. Of course, the skeptical explanation is compelling. The curse was largely a creation of sensationalist newspapers, eager to sell copies. Howard Carter, the man who was first through the door, the primary desecrator, lived for another 17 years, dying at the age of 64. A scientific study of the survival rates of the Westerners who entered the tomb showed no statistical difference from a control group. Modern theories propose a rational culprit, dormant, potentially toxic molds and bacteria, sealed inside the tomb for millennia, which could have been fatal to individuals with weakened immune systems like Lord Carnarvon. But the legend endures for a reason. The sequence of events is too perfect, too cinematic. The dead patron, the city-wide blackout, the dying dog, the string of strange deaths. Can science truly explain away the feeling that by disturbing the sacred rest of a god-king, these men awoke something ancient and vengeful, a power that, as promised, came on swift wings? So we have journeyed from the frozen Alps of Ötzi to the gilded halls of the White House, from the bloody history of a cursed diamond to the final fatal prophecy of Russia's mad monk, and finally into the golden guarded tomb of an Egyptian pharaoh. In each case, a warning was given, and a trail of death and disaster followed. Science and skepticism offer us a rational way out of the darkness. They speak of confirmation bias, of media sensationalism, of dormant bacteria, and the statistical inevitability of tragedy. And they are not wrong. It is entirely possible that each of these stories is nothing more than a series of unfortunate events, woven together by our very human need to find patterns in chaos, to create meaning where there is only randomness. It is the logical, reasonable explanation, and yet the stories persist. They endure because they tap into a primal, unsettling part of our consciousness. A fear that the world is not as orderly as we would like to believe. A suspicion that some lines should not be crossed, that some graves should not be disturbed, and that some words, once spoken, carry an energy and an intent that outlives the speaker. They remind us that for all our modern knowledge, there are still shadows in history that we cannot fully illuminate. Ultimately, the evidence has been presented. The historical record, with all its strange and chilling details, is before you. Was it all just coincidence, a collection of macabre fairy tales? Or did these people, in their arrogance and ambition, stumble upon forces beyond their comprehension? The final verdict, as always, is yours. Coincidence or curse?